Welcome, everyone. We're so glad to have you guys out this evening. I'm really happy to see such a packed house this evening representing District 6, Antioch, and also my colleagues, Will Pinkston and Anna Shepard. We're here today to not only introduce you to Dr. Joseph and have you guys get an opportunity to meet him and hear from him personally, but also, and most importantly, for us to listen to you and to learn about the things that you are concerned about with Metro and Nashville Public Schools. So we've done now, I'm not sure how many of these, Dr. Joseph. This is number 10. And if any of you have had the opportunity to attend 10 of these, such as I've attended all of them, we've heard everything, and we've also, many of you have Googled Dr. Joseph, and you've learned personal stories about him. So I just want to tell you some things about him that I've learned since the day we met, and actually some before we met. We were at a Listen and Learn at Glencliff High School, and one of the persons there asked Dr. Joseph, how did he know that this was the place for him? And I said to her, I told them about a story. In March, I went to the National School Board Association in Boston, and I had a layover that was supposed to occur in Maryland. Well, when I got on the plane, when I boarded the plane, there was a person sitting in the middle aisle, there was a middle seat vacant, and then there was a window seat. And I asked if it was okay to get on, and he said it was okay. And as I sat down, he and I began to talk, and he asked where was I from, and I told him I was from Nashville. And he said, oh, you guys are in the middle of a director search. And I said, yeah, how do you know? He said, well, everybody knows. And he said, we've got this, he said, we've got this, this guy, this David Banner guy, I heard they're trying to get him. And I said, oh, really? I said, we're looking for a rock star. We're looking for a Superman or a Superwoman. So I don't know if he's going to fit. So we were just laughing, and then eventually a lady came on, and she sat there. Well, we talked for a while, and eventually the airplane took off on the runway, and you guys know what that feels like, and it just flies down the runway. And all of a sudden, it gets to the end of the runway, and it stopped. And we sat there for about an hour, maybe 2 hours, until eventually they said they were working on the airplane, and they came and they got me off of the plane and told me I wasn't going to make my connecting flight. So the next morning, or somewhere, I don't even remember, I was so exhausted, but I received an email from this guy, Christian. And you know how you flipping through your phone at any weird hour of the night, and I mean, he really said some great things about this guy, but I didn't attend. I didn't attend because at this time, we didn't know anything about anyone that was on the search list. So for us, it was just blind. I know you guys felt uncomfortable with the process because I did as well. And the funny thing is that I couldn't find the email later, so I wasn't sure whether or not I dreamed it or if it was a really true story. But anyways, so when we got the list and they told us the people that were on the list, they gave us the first 6 candidates. And they said this guy from Maryland, I was like, it couldn't be the same person. Sure, there are 2 of them. And so then he came in for the actual interview. He was the first person that we interviewed. And it was obvious, like it was obvious. He blew his interview away. And the thing that I would like to say the most that impressed me with him in that interview, really the first interview, is I sat there and I listened to him and I felt like I grew. And I think that's the thing that I want, well, that is the thing that I want to see our district, just all of us. I want us all to grow. He immediately, and it's just been amazing. I just wasn't expecting some of the things that he's brought to the table. We started reading, first the assignment was for us to read Leadership and Deception. And we all read it, our first retreat, and we all just loved on each other. I know that's amazing. Also, we hugged and loved the first weekend, and then also we've been reading the Anatomy of Peace. But I can just feel myself growing personally. And he has an award-winning dissertation, and it's hard for some people to get a dissertation written, period. So this man, our leader, has an award-winning national dissertation. So I can just go on and on and on. I really can. But I just want you guys to know that this is someone that if you have an opportunity to have a conversation with him, you're going to grow. And I think once he's done, we're going to give him 20 years here. He has about 20 good years on him left. Where I think we'll have leaders all throughout our district. So I'm very proud, and I'm sure these guys would love to say something. So I'll hush and let them add something.
Sure, I'll be real brief. My name's Will Pinkston. Again, I represent District 7, which is mostly the Glencliff cluster, some of the Overton cluster, and some of the Antioch cluster. So I have Smith Springs Elementary School and Una Elementary School in my district, and I'm very honored to represent South and Southeast Nashville on the school board. Real briefly, I'll use a football analogy. They say that the difference between college and pro ball is the real difference is the speed. It's just so much faster. And what we're seeing right now with the leadership transition that's occurred in the school system is the speed has changed dramatically. Dr. Joseph, within a few hours after we hired him on May 13th, called into the central office and put a freeze on principal hires and transfers because he knows what we know, of course, which is if you think of this as a school system of 86,000 kids, it's overwhelming. Where do you begin? If you also think of it as a system of 6,000 teachers, that's a little bit more manageable. But if you fundamentally also think of it as a system of 150 principals, well, by golly, you can get those people in the same room and make some things happen. So he has taken a direct hand more than a month before he even got here in making key leadership decisions. So we're so grateful to have someone who is moving at warp speed, and we look forward to seeing what that yields in the future. I want to, before I hand it over to Ms. Shepard, take a point of personal privilege and recognize a couple of our elected officials who are in the room. I know I saw Council Lady Karen Johnson come in a minute ago. Karen, where are you? Would you raise your hand? There she is. Council Lady Tanika Vircher, my friend, our friend, where is she? There she is. And I see our former school board chair, Cheryl Mays, and Kathy Buggs from Congressman Cooper's office. And did I miss any current or former elected officials?
Sheila Calloway.
The judge is in the house. Hey, Judge. And with that, I'm going to hand this over to my colleague, my chairwoman, Anna Shepard.
Thank you. Oh, Will, is this on? Can y'all hear me? It's on. Okay. So if y'all have been watching us, you know that we don't often come around the table and have a unanimous 9-0 vote. But that's what we did when we selected Dr. Joseph as our director of schools. And so for any casual observer, that would be very telling that we had a 9-0 vote for Dr. Joseph to be our director of schools. And that's how firmly we believe that he is the person for the job. So he built 10 days into his contract before his July 1 start date. He worked the entire month of June before he got here for his July 1st start date. So of that, we are very appreciative. And he has just, I don't know that he sleeps at night, because, I mean, wow. But he has done remarkable already, and I am so excited of the things to come for this district. It's only going to be getting better for us. So I appreciate your being here. It's telling that we have this many people here. I will tell you that I got here really early today because if I don't have a GPS in my phone, I can't go anywhere. So I got here really early. I thought the traffic would be bad. And so I thought, well, I'll just go over to Zaxby's and get a bite to eat. And so I went in there. There was some A.Z. Kelly principal there and teachers there, and they recognized me and invited me to eat with them, so I crashed their party so we could eat supper together. So thank you for that invitation. I do appreciate it. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Joseph at this point. Thank you.
Yes, so I'm going to talk to you guys first about some housekeeping rules, but first of all, I would like to acknowledge the Cane Ridge High School band. Great job. And also the ambassadors from Antioch High School. And I think we had some ambassadors as well from Cane Ridge High School. So we are going to have translation services available to anyone who may need them. There's a table in the lobby with translation headsets. And I'd like to ask our translators to come up front.
مساء الخير، اسمي شيري بشرى، أنا مترجمة لغة عربية. إحنا موجودين في الخلف في ترابيزة علشان موفرين السماعات والراديو للي عايز ترجمة فورية. شكراً.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Manuel Díaz de León y si necesitan servicios de un intérprete de español, en la parte de atrás hay dispositivos y audífonos y con gusto les ayudamos. Gracias.
خیلی واری باش نویم سربسته ام ورگیر زمان کردینه چی پیدوی به ورگیرانه هبید ما سماعتم پشته بلوب چت گل خوبی نتور سپاس
शुभ सन्ध्या मेरो नाम दीपक गुरुङ हो म नेपाली ट्रान्सलेटर हुँ अनि यदि तपाईहरुलाई नेपाली को ट्रान्सलेटर चाहियो भने पछाडी आउनु होला अनि पछाडी आएर म तपाईहरुलाई मद्दत गर्नेछु धन्यवाद
magacayga waxaa la yiraahdaa Imraan haddii aad u baahan tihiin in af Soomaali leedinku turjumo xafladan wax ka socda fadlan xagga dambe iigu imaada ma maasantii
Thank you. I'd also like to acknowledge Faith Life Church for allowing us to use their building today. I love this location. As you can see, this district represents so many different languages, but we're also spread out so wide. So I was trying to make sure that it was centralized. I didn't want to put it too far out because we also are one of the largest employed districts, and we have so many people trying to get in from work up 24, and it's difficult. So I wanted to make it as convenient for you guys as possible. In addition, we'd like to, so I'm going to tell you the house rules. We will have 2 people who will have microphones, and when you raise your hand, they will come to you. We want to make sure that we don't have any lines in the middle of the aisles, and we also want to make sure that you know that you can only speak for 1 minute, and as soon as you get to that minute, they'll start pulling the microphone away from you. In order to hear from as many people as possible, please do your best. I know you have a lot to say, but please do your best to keep your questions or your responses as short as possible, and also to remember to use the gallery outside or along the walkway. You can put any additional questions or concerns that you may have there, and we will be certain to address those. And for many of you who are afraid to speak on the microphone, you can write your questions or comments on a comment card, and one of the monitors will read those aloud. And that is all. You have until 7:30, and I guess we'll turn it over to Dr. Joseph.
Well, thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Can you hear me okay? Yes, sir. Okay. Isn't it great to be in a house of hope? Can we give it a round of applause just for the place? You know, sometimes we need to retool and refuel, and this is the best place to be able to do both of those things. I can't tell you how excited I am to be in the Metro Nashville Public School District. You know, leadership matters, you know, plain and simple. And this Board of Education with Ms. Hunter and Mr. Pinkston and Ms. Shepard have been demonstrating clear leadership from the time they appointed me on May 13th. Like I said, really that next day at about 5:45, we started working with Dr. Gentry, just saying it's time to show America and to show Nashville in particular, what a group of people who are committed and passionate about doing the right work can do, and we can do much if we put our mind to it. Right? I'll say in particular. With Ms. Hunter, she's been we've spoken a lot since we began this journey. And she's been extremely passionate and committed about the work that needs to be done. How do we raise expectations for all students, across all of Nashville, but particularly, in this region, and particularly what have we been doing about special education work in our district? How are we listening to our parents, responding to their needs, and making sure families know that we're serious about supporting their children and adhering to what the IEP says they need to do well. Along with that, Mr. Pinkston has been beyond passionate and committed about not just his cluster, but the entire school district, particularly about what are we doing with English language learners and how are we making sure our English language learners are supported. What is our commitment to pre-K? How are we ensuring that we're raising expectations and opportunities and giving all kids access as we do this work? And how do we make sure that all of our neighborhood schools are of quality and parents actually understand that? He said over and over again that most of the problems that we see lie with communication. If we just communicated better and focused, we'd be doing better. And with Ms. Shepard, she has been extremely passionate about the same issues, but particularly culture within our district. So what are we doing to make sure that teachers' voices are heard, that our administrators feel respected and have the tools that they have, and what do we do, as a district to model that for this school district? I mean, we have dynamic leadership in our board, and if we can give them a round of applause, because their work goes unnoticed sometimes and not always appreciated, but it's tremendous work that has to be done. And it has been amazing that this being the 10th Listen and Learn session, and we have had lots of people come out sharing their hopes and their dreams for our district, and there's a clear recognition that educating children is a community affair. This isn't an instance where one person comes in to solve anybody's problems, because Superman doesn't exist, and nor does Superwoman. But having said that, when a community comes together, and I'm so pleased to see, we have with us, Dean Harris from Trevecca University here with her staff. We thank you. We'll give her a round of applause taking the time to come out. And we've had other universities and so forth coming, but that commitment has been clear and there. We've hired 20 principals this summer. 20. So that's been a lot of work finding the right matches for our schools. So if we have any principals in the audience, can you please stand? Principals? We thank you. We thank you for your leadership. And amongst the principals, we have Dr. Kiva Wiley, who's the new principal of Antioch High School. Dr. Wiley, stand once again. Extremely excited to be here. Do we have any teachers in the audience? Teachers, can you stand? Please stand. Look, when I see a lot of teachers, I know it's going to be a good night. I'm ready. But you matter. You matter, and we want to know that your voice matters. There's no way we can have an extraordinary school district without listening to you, without giving you the tools that you need to succeed, and without giving you clear targets and areas of focus, because we have to do better. We can't, as a district, accept 38% of our elementary students reading at grade level. That is just unacceptable. We can't accept 41% of our 8th graders reading on grade level. That tells us there has to be a sense of urgency, but we recognize we have to match high accountability with high supports. And it's one of the reasons we have been real thoughtful about building a team, that understands that philosophy. And when we look at our leadership team that we have, we feel like pound for pound we have one of the best leadership teams in the country. Dr. Monique Felder is coming to us, having served as both my left and right hand in Prince George's County as my executive director for teaching and learning. But prior to that, she supervised gifted and talented programs in Montgomery County Public Schools. And Montgomery County is one of the largest, highest performing school districts in America. And prior to that, she had been a teacher and an award-winning principal. So she recognizes in her role as chief academic officer, she has to make sure that teachers have the supports, training, and resources that they need if we're going to move from 38% to 100% of our kids reading at grade level in 3rd grade. And she comes with a passion and a desire to do this work. So Dr. Felder, we thank you for being here with us. Prior to my arrival, you had steady leadership in Mr. Chris Henson. Mr. Henson he's known throughout the state of Tennessee for his excellence in his fiduciary responsibility, making sure that every dollar counts. And in his role, that's one of the reasons the board tapped him on 2 occasions to serve as the interim superintendent. He would have been superintendent, he just didn't want the job. So I thank you, Brett, for allowing me to come in. But I clearly recognize talent when I see it. And as chief operating officer, he's going to be responsible for all operations within the district, because we need the excellence that he's shown for years in finances expanded to every area of operations. So Mr. Henson, thank you for your leadership and your work. We have one of the most diverse school districts in the country, and one of the largest school districts in the country. And when we talk about equity and excellence, that doesn't happen by chance. It happens by design. And somebody has to be in charge of thinking about issues of equity and excellence at every opportunity and every facet of our work. And Dr. Maritza Gonzalez has been doing that for years in Prince George's County, and we were able to recruit her to come to Nashville to support us in this effort as the Executive Officer for Diversity and Equity Initiatives. Dr. Gonzalez has focused her career on really thinking about how do we make sure children and families that have not had a voice have an active voice in the school district. And as we look at every aspect, from our curriculum work to our human resources work to our talent management to how we're appropriating resources, she'll be there helping us think through issues of equity. Are we getting the right resources and right people in the right places? So to Dr. Gonzalez, we thank you for your leadership. We have had very engaging conversations about choice in this district, and our conversations have really centered around, charter school or not charter school, and this kind of played out with this, kind of good versus evil scenario. And it's foolish. It's foolish what we've been doing. We want excellent schools. Period. We could care less whether it's a charter school, we can care less whether it's a public school. We just want in every neighborhood that there are quality options and there are high quality programs and there are people pushing and working hard and understanding the sense of urgency to make sure all kids get what they need. But we've got to broaden now. Our challenge is really to broaden that conversation, though, and understand, so what is it that parents really want? I mean, what are those programs that we can have that truly advantage children within our district? So it's one of the reasons on my transition team, we have a group of experts looking at issues of choice. And leading our charter school work is Mr. Dennis Queen, who truly understands what I'm talking about. Mr. Queen has been a community superintendent in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg School District, which has been acknowledged as one of the most innovative large urban school districts in the country. He's also been in Milwaukee Public School District as an area superintendent supervising 34 schools, and Milwaukee has dealt with issues of choice longer than any other urban district in the country. He was a highly successful middle school and high school principal with over 10 years experience, and he also has been a police officer, so he can protect me when people get crazy. So Mr. Queen, we thank you for choosing Metro Nashville Public Schools. We've also had interesting conversations in this district about priority schools, and we've got a lot of priority schools within our district. Priority schools are schools within the district that have not been performing well on the assessments, and they actually are performing in the lower quadrant of the state. It doesn't mean, my stance on that, it doesn't mean that you don't have high quality teaching in priority schools, because it does exist. Sometimes you just don't have the right combination of support and thoughtful work and collaboration to just get breakthrough results. I mean, I keep telling people the past few nights that, I'm a Redskins fan, and I know what it's like to see a team on paper that look like they're supposed to get it, and they just don't win a game, and you can't figure that out. Sort of like the Titans, you just so much potential, but the breakthrough just doesn't come. But all it takes is the right leadership and the right focus, and we saw that with the Redskins last year as they put Captain Kirk at the helm and on the football team, and they got a new coach, and all of a sudden they go from people not expecting not much to them being the division champions, and that's that's the type of transformation that you see with good leadership. And as we think about the work in priority schools, we feel very good. We couldn't get Captain Kirk because he signed a big contract, but we got Mo Carrasco to come over from Montgomery County Public Schools to help us. Prior to coming here, Mo was the leader of secondary leadership development in Montgomery County Public Schools, and in his role, he trained and supported all secondary administrators. So he trained them through a multi-year process, and he trained all assistant principals at the middle school and high school level. Prior to that, he was the principal of Richard Montgomery High School, and Richard Montgomery High School is one of the highest performing high schools in the country. And when he got it, they were still, they were ranked in the top 100. He made it dramatically better because the school had a magnet program, and you know how that goes. The magnet program, you had affluent kids with well, who were well equipped and had been studying their whole life to get into the program, and they got in. They had been doing well, but what Mo did was looked at issues of equity and said, well, it's nice that we got kids who are doing well, but we got kids who, if given an invitation, access, and an opportunity, could probably do well as well. And he opened the doors to give more kids opportunities into those rigorous programs, and he provided supports. And they did much better than they had ever done before, resulting in Mo being named a secondary principal of the year for the state of Maryland. And before that, he had worked in a middle school that dramatically turned it around. So when we needed a good coach, we think we found that in Mo Carrasco. So Mo, thank you. So this team just augments a great team that was already within our district. But we said right up front, it's important to make sure that we have leaders in the senior leadership that look like our school district, that diversity, you can have diversity and excellence and it not be a misnomer, that can exist. So I'm just doing what I said we were gonna do. And now that we've got the team together, we've got a lot of work to do. And to do that work, we need to hear from you. It's really important that we understand your hopes and dreams, and we understand what's working in this district, the things that you want us to continue doing, and what are the things that make you nuts, that make you want to just get out of this place or throw a rock at somebody. We gotta understand that so we can do something about it. So tonight is about us listening to you, and we have people capturing your questions. Many of the questions I might not have an answer to because we just got here, but I commit to getting those answers, and we're going to take the information we get here and feed it into the teams that are helping me think through my first 100 days and my transition team. So we have a team focused on student achievement, we have one focused on school choice, we have one focused on communications, and we have one focused on talent development. How do we keep the best in the country here? And feeling good about doing the work here. So with your help, we're going to move this district forward, and we're going to do it at an accelerated pace. That is the charge that this board has charged me with, and it's what I need your help with. So without further ado, we are going to have our staff members coming out to bring the microphones to you. Once again, they're going to give you that 1 minute, and as you see it slowly moving away, it's time to start finishing up that question so we can get as many questions in as possible over the next 30 minutes.
Dr. Joseph, we'll begin with a question from the comment card. What will you do to address the high suspension and expulsion rates of our Black and Latino students?
So we've got to understand the why there. Right? Kids are getting suspended at high rates, and if our African American and Latinos students are getting suspended, why? What are they reacting to within the environment, or what can we do to support them? I think this is something that we need to speak with our high school principals about, and our middle school and elementary principals to understand the whys. And we've got to work. This is an opportunity, I think, to work with our nonprofit organizations, to work with our religious organizations, to think through the wraparound services that are needed. Because when a child gets suspended, they're hurting. They're hurting, and there are supports that need to be put in place. And sometimes when you have a lack of support, you have more issues. But I'm a believer that the adults have to run our buildings, and we've got to support the adults running our buildings. But we also have to look at the supports that are needed to make sure that our children are whole. And if there are challenges, we can delve down and go deeper to help them overcome what those issues are that get them out of school.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph. Another question from the card. If you could choose one initiative for teachers to focus on, what would it be?
Literacy. Literacy. We need to make sure that every teacher is equipped to effectively support children's literacy development. So that means we need to make sure they have the right materials. We need to make sure they understand something about literacy, and we're focused about doing that in a very cohesive fashion. We need to help them understand the reading assessments that we give and understand the diversity of learners that they have within their classes, and help them be able to differentiate and meet students' needs where they are. We need to support our schools in having the right response to interventions when we see students behind. I mean, when a child gets into a high school and they're reading at a 3rd, 4th, 5th grade level, you're in trouble. We're in trouble because that student will never get into, or will never have an easy run at a biology book or a physics book or a U.S. history book. And we've got to equip our staff with how do we best address those needs.
Hello. Curriculum. I believe that, what would you do concerning curriculum? I found it that our kids have too many holes and gaps. They do not have a lot of critical thinking skills. They're not taught with consistency or mastery. They're taught to take a test. So they're jumping around. They don't have a lot of foundation, proper grammar. It's like they're getting a crash course and not building things like math. It builds upon itself. And so if they're taught to do one thing, they don't have the necessary tools as far as to build upon that. If you're going to teach algebra, you got to know how to do multiplication and division and those things first. And I see with our kids, there's too many holes, too many gaps. And so when they get to college, they're not ready for college. And I've met quite a few professors that say the same thing.
Yeah. So we have to look at our curriculum and make sure our curriculum is first rigorous and coherent. And on my transition team, we have Dr. Michael Casserly, who is he's in charge of the Council of Greater City Schools. So they look at the 70 largest urban districts in the country, and they look at best practices in those areas. And one of his charges is to look at our curriculum and see how coherent it is in terms of making sure our children, master those concepts. We've got to have conversations and look at what our policies say. Because kids, I agree with you. We shouldn't be moving kids along if they don't know something. Because cumulative deficits build over time, and if you fall behind and you don't catch up, they just grow. And then we have to think of, and that's where I don't know where we are as a district with having real strong response to intervention structures within our schools. When we see our kids don't know something, there should be a systemic response in the building to provide additional support. And similarly, when we see our kids know the stuff, we shouldn't bore them to death because they're waiting on other kids to get this thing, what they need to know. We have to find a way to move them forward. So our response to interventions work is going to be significant as we move towards the future.
Hi, I want to ask about how the district will handle bullying. I've noticed that in elementary, middle school, and such, there have been a lot of cases of bullying. And it doesn't seem like there's a clear-cut way that the district is choosing to address that. It seems like it's, go to your principal or go to your teacher, but I just don't feel that the district is really doing anything to advocate for bullying and to put a stop to it, or maybe just to educate, children or their families about bullying.
Yeah, and this has come up in another listen and learn, and my response then and now is I do need to look into that. I think it starts with what our district policy is and then what our administrative procedure is. And it should be very clear what our response is across this district when it's reported that a student is bullied. I think we need to look at, in addition, we have to look at, I know we have restorative practices, and the board wisely invested in more resource for restorative practices this year. But I have to see how it all connects. But it starts with a clear policy, then we have to have a clear administrative procedure, We have to communicate with parents back and forth and communicate with the students clearly. And those are key components that have to be in a plan. But that is something that we will look into immediately.
Good evening. I recently was in Atlanta at a conference called the Hope Conference. John Hope Bryan is a nationally known entrepreneur. And one of the things that he discussed in that conference was the idea of students who were graduating from high school that Silicon Valley was already bringing from high school to California to be coders. And so what are we doing in our district about vocational skill training and job readiness when we consider the age of technology and to some extent, traditional college is becoming obsolete?
Yeah. So this district has been at the national forefront with their academies, their career academies. And within the career academies, I think it's great that we have them and they are a national model. We have to look at, are our children getting certifications, and are there certification areas, particularly in areas such as coding? And I know there was a recent study from the Department of Education that talked about the fact that urban school districts really lack opportunities for children to engage in coding. When we look at jobs of the future, that's an area where it's going to continue to expand. So I think we need to assess where we are. That I don't have the answer to, but it's something that we'll look at as we're looking at programming options and expanding options across the district. I think in this region, we should have some of the most advanced STEM programs in the country because there are very few places in the country that have so many universities so closely located and so much, with the healthcare field here. We have more people per capita in healthcare than any place in the country. And I think we have we have the resource to have that type of vision, to have something dramatically better than what you can see in most places. But we will look into that.
So my mother always taught me to have my homework done before I presented.
Yes, ma'am. I'm ready for this one. Let me sit up. Okay. I appreciate it. That's a whole lot of writing here, so I might not be able to get at it just yet.
And I have extras if anybody else in the audience wants it. But I was looking through the numbers because I wanted to be sure I really had a comprehensive view of where we stood as a district. And I was looking at our average ACT score, which is about a 20. It's a point below the national average, but 20 out of 36 could be better. And then I was looking at our AP scores, which are good measures of how ready our kids are for anything post-secondary. And only about 2,600 of our kids out of 20,000 are taking AP classes, college-level classes. We got about a 45% pass rate. But those who pass, 75% are coming out of Hume Fogg and MLK. Then I'm looking at our labor statistics, and we're looking at employment, and I'm like, okay, well, you know what? Our kids are not going to have a fighting chance unless they have some type of education beyond high school. And we're talking about over $2 million over the course of a lifetime if our kids just get a high school degree versus going on to get anything beyond high school. This is important for everybody, not just, parents, the community at large, but our nation. So then I started thinking through what my husband always tells me, don't come to me with a problem, come to a solution. So then I started looking through at all the different ways we've tried to address this problem in Metro in the past few years. So we have expanded our athletic program where we have a quarter of all high school students participating in athletics, almost half of all middle school students participating. We have, interventions. We do have interventions. We do have interventions with our ELL program, leadership development, and AVID, and the academies, and Big Picture, and virtual, and libraries. We've done the academies, which you were just talking about, to try to provide vocational support. We offer free busing. We have MTA. We have health services. So I want you, I'm coming to the question. So I want you to know that I've gone through, did all the research, and through all this, I looked at the money we spent. We're talking almost $1 billion that are spent, $700 million every year in education. So I want to know specifically, no generalities about, what are you going to do to address our lack of academic achievement, of our kids being prepared for post-secondary school? Like, what is your plan coming in that you're going to implement first day to start turning this district around?
Yeah. So that's the longest minute in history. I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. So it's a very complex question that you asked me, and so what I would say is the first thing I'm going to do is convene some of the best minds in the country to think about this, because the issue is greater than myself. It may be greater than my capacity, and I fully acknowledge that. So like I shared, we have Dr. Michael Casserly, who is chairing my Student Achievement Committee, and he's answering those questions that you just asked. I mean, those are the questions that have been posed to say, so what are the best districts in the country doing to increase AP performance, SAT performance, or ACT performance? What are the best districts in the country doing to focus on literacy and mathematics, and how do we go about doing that? I mean, we're organizing ourselves to be able to do the work much more coherently, because before you can start attacking a problem, you've got to understand what the root cause of the problem is. And so if anybody came in here with a plan from outside of the district, run, because if they don't take the time to understand the why and to really delve into the root causes of the nature of the issue, they're going to be spending a lot of money. Like you just named a lot of initiatives, and I think that's where a lot of districts make a mistake. They jump in just throwing everything under the sun under it without really being focused. And I'm a believer in doing less much more effectively, because excellence tends to be narrowly defined. So, you asked for specifics, and I'm just telling you, maybe after, if we speak in December, I can give you some real specifics, because then that would have given me the month that I need to really understand why our data looks as you have described it in these charts. And then I can be more specific about, based upon these root causes and in this environment, here are the logical steps we can take.
Hi, Laura Beth with the Vanderbilt University Growing Right Onto Wellness program. And I would like to know, how do you plan to encourage and utilize community partnerships and to maximize good health?
Yeah, I think this year is about developing the plan. And we need to get our community involved in understanding what the problems are within the district, and then coming together to figure out who's best in class in terms of people in the community to support us in executing the plan. So what I envision is taking this first semester to us identify what the problems are, looking at the second semester to actually executing and developing a plan, and we'll do that in partnership with a number of the nonprofits, the universities that are within the region, with our teachers, with our parents, with our principals. So we'll come out next semester communicating. So here's what we think the problems are, and here's how we think we're going to go about it. What do you think with this? And then by July 1 of next year, we'll lock in on a plan. And once we have the areas we're going to be focused on, then we can bring our partners to the table and say, so we're focused on literacy, who can support us and how can you support us, and be specific and go deep. But you can't bring people to the party if you don't got your music straight, right? Because then people just kind of get frustrated standing around, right? So we're gonna make sure our music is ready, and then we're gonna get people to come dance with us.
Dr. Joseph, as a 69-year-old white woman from Alabama, I'm going to be the elephant in the room. And I'm going to tell you that I know white privilege is real, and I also know that Black lives matter. But I've worked with a number of people in Metro who are afraid of our diversity. What can you do to maximize the beautiful, wonderful diversity that this district has, and how can those of us who have retired and are no longer working full-time support you in that effort?
I look to the left and right for some water. No, that is a big question, and you're right. Yeah, America's had a hard time with diversity for a long time, and I think one of the things I'm so proud of working with this board with is the fact that from day one, particularly Will, Thais, and Anna, I mean, they put issues of diversity and race right on the table and said, don't run from it. It is what it is. Mr. Pinkston gave me a book that I keep referencing that I'm very intrigued by called The Making of the Unequal Metropolis. And within it, it talks about the desegregation of the Metro Nashville public schools and the challenges that the city has had as it relates to issues of race and socioeconomics for decades. So that what we have to do, and we have been committed to doing, is just openly talking about these challenges. It starts with recognizing there's a problem and acknowledging that privilege does exist, and that's why we have to have multiple voices around the table when we look at a problem, because good-intentioned people might just miss it. Because if you've never lived like you said you're a 69-year-old white woman. I'm a 41-year-old very chocolate black man. And life for me ain't been no crystal stair as a result of it. So you come with a perspective and a lens of the world that just may be different. So step one is you got to have the right people around the table to even engage in that dialogue, and we're working to do that now. I think as we continue to work as a board and administration, we'll continue to just be open and honest about what our data says and not be afraid to have those tough conversations that we need to have. Like, for example, when the very first question that came up was, so why are so many African-American kids and Latino kids getting suspended at disproportionate rates? Well, it could be because we don't have a whole lot of Black and Latino teachers and they don't know how to handle these kids. Kids raise their voice. Kids raise their voice and we're ready to just suspend them because we're scared. That could be a problem, or it could be something else. But until we can look at the data and then really pose those questions, we don't know. So I think to answer your question, our commitment is to not run from what we know is the elephant in the room. When it's an elephant, call it an elephant, and then work on trying to tackle it.
Dr. Joseph, what is your plan to close the achievement gap for students with disabilities, English language learners, and students that come from a low SES?
Yeah, it will be a priority for our work. That's why I've used the word equity and excellence probably 1 million times here, and that's code for we have to raise the level of expectation for all students, and make sure that there are high expectations for all students. I think one of the reasons we have an achievement gap, I think, is because we've got a motivation gap with a lot of kids that we've got to get to the heart of. And this is where, we really got to work with our churches, our nonprofits, our families, because we've got to help our children see their worth. We've got to help them see, the excellence, the giftedness that's within them. I think, one of the reasons we fall short, more often than not, is our kids. Our kids don't have high esteem, and if you don't have high esteem, you don't push. You don't push to work, to when challenge, when you're confronted with challenge, you give up, or you act out, or you do these other things. So we've got to pay attention to the social, emotional needs of our children, and while we simultaneously raise expectations for all of our children. We've got to closely monitor when our children are not meeting the marks that we expect, and make sure we give them additional supports, additional time, and additional motivation to move. But our challenge is we've got to accelerate for all. But when we look at our children, our English language learners, our special education students, our children who don't come from a lot of money, our African American, Latino children in particular, because our data says they're not doing as well, we've got to figure out how to even accelerate there. And that's where that equity piece comes, because when you look at the equity piece, for an English language learner, for a student in special education, for students who are in poverty, they may need more support and resource, because while you're raising expectations for all, you've got to accelerate what they're doing if you're going to close a gap. Because if everybody's moving equally at the same pace, the deficit doesn't change, everybody just shifts. If you're going to close a gap, at some point you've got to figure out how to accelerate those that were underperforming. And that's going to require resource and focus. But we're thinking about, we have thoughts on the philosophical framework that has to happen. Now we just got to look at the resource and figure out, where can we accelerate to do the work that needs to be done.
Dr. Joseph.
How you doing, Dr. Joseph?
Well.
My name is Coach Mike Davis. I'm a Metro school teacher. I had a two-part question to ask you. What could you do to make the other schools more inviting, like the magnet schools? What can you do for other schools that students will want to go there and parents will want to send their kids there, like Meigs, Martin Luther King, Hume Fogg, and Head? We don't have enough magnet schools, but we have a lot of kids that cannot get into these high-performing schools, and I have a daughter that's one of those students.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things we must do is make sure that all of our neighborhood schools have the type of programming that any student should be able to go to their neighborhood school and get their needs met. And we need to make sure that parents in the community understand the excellence that currently exists in our schools. And if they don't, if schools are lacking, we've got to be honest and we've got to show the community that we're working hard to make it better. But we just can't accept the status quo. As we look at magnets and things of that nature, the challenge is, I'm a believer in, I think you do have highly gifted students that do need a specialized learning environment with like peers. I think that's important. But the majority of our students within our district are going to be educated in regular, comprehensive public schools because we'll never have that, so we've got to make sure that those schools are equipped. So one of the things we are going to be looking at are just the programming options within our schools, what's the quality in our schools, because there are huge disparities from school to school in terms of what the offerings are. And we need to address that immediately. And we will look to do that. But it is a complex conversation. We luckily we have Dr. Felder with us, who is an expert in gifted education and rigorous curriculum options and programs and things of that nature. We've got to look at all of our schools and make sure all of our schools have the ability not only to address the highly gifted, but to address our special needs students, our English second language learners, and kids like me who were just solidly average and just needed somebody to push me. Now, I wasn't necessarily gifted, but I'd work hard, and if you gave me a chance, I could sneak a C and keep it moving.
This is the 5-minute warning.
Dr. Joseph, based on the budget for this year, which I don't know how much input you actually were able to have as far as presenting or your staff, what's a realistic expectation of the things that you would be able to want to try to do within the first 6 months and within the first year? A lot of people are asking a lot of questions about wide-ranging problems that have been a problem for a lot of years in the Metro County area. What's realistic for you, and what can we look to see when we look at the new Channel 2 or Channel 5 that you're doing in the immediate area to kind of address some of the more immediate needs? And what are some of those immediate needs that you would like to try to address within the first 6 months to a year? Because you just started your job in May, so yeah,
9 days ago. I'm not counting them. Yeah, so I think one of the immediate goals is for us to focus. I think we're doing a lot right now. We got a lot of stuff. We're doing a lot of stuff, and I think we've got to get into a less is more philosophy, and we can start that without cost. I think we can listen and try to understand what the real problems are. I mean, we see the data that says, and the data is not what we want it to be, but I don't know if we really know why the data is what it is. So I think we can, within the year, be able to communicate what we think our hypotheses are to some of the issues that have plagued the district for such a long time. I think in this year, I mean, there is always an opportunity in a budget to realign and refocus. I mean, there won't be anything dramatic, but I think we can look at what's happening in elementary reading right now, and we can reappropriate some funds that have been in the budget to make sure that we are clear and focused on reading. I also think this year we can put structures in place, and we've already begun doing that, to make sure we're training leadership teams in their schools to be able to have a clear vision and focus and know what the focus is and know how they're going to be supported. So we can restructure how central office supports schools to make sure that schools aren't fighting alone, that they have somebody there that is a true partner, thinking through the work with them and helping to realign resources as needed. I think this year, if we do anything this year, we can have a plan. We can have a plan that's ambitious, that is our moonshot. Where do we want to be, and how do we boldly proclaim it and not be afraid of high expectations, embrace high expectations, and just acknowledge, I'd rather fall short being ambitious with my goals than having low goals that nobody cares if I hit. And that we can accomplish this year.
Hey guys, we do apologize, but we are down to the wire. So if we did not get to your question, please make sure that you use the question cards so that we can answer them appropriately, and they will get back to you. The responses will get back to you in a timely manner.
I'm a parent and an educator, and we in Metro lose a lot of students from tier to tier. So from elementary to middle school, and then from middle to high school, we lose a tremendous amount of students to private and charter schools. I think part of that may have been a disjointedness or a real challenge in cohesion between school leadership from tier to tier. And I'm just wondering if you have a plan or how you'll go about structuring conversations, vertical conversations among school leaders and leadership from tier to tier to tier.
Yeah, I mean, Shepard and I were actually talking about that today. We were saying that it's a theme that's coming up in all of our listen and learn sessions, and it's clear that we've got to do something about middle school. The perception of middle school or the reality of it, whatever it is right now, I need to assess it. But there's work that has to be done at the middle school level. I spoke with high school principals earlier, it was last week, maybe last Friday. I saw high school principals, and I told them I see high school principals as the governors of the town. And they have to take control of what's happening and facilitate conversations at that middle school and elementary level in terms of figuring out, because they're the ones with the big money in the district too. And then you got to figure out how you support your middle schools and how you support your elementary schools. And we utilize, we share expertise, we share resources, and we have structures for conversations so people are clear about the end game. Because the reality is sometimes at the elementary school, you don't realize if you don't give the middle school, advanced math students, and by 8th grade, they don't get to algebra, then Antioch High School, Dr. Wiley will never have AP Calculus. Because they weren't, when they get into high school and 9th grade algebra, there's no such thing as calculus by 12th. It just doesn't, it's not going to happen. So the question becomes, how does Dr. Wiley support what's happening at the middle school level to make sure that algebra number is strong, so she can, when they come in geometry, now, you're cooking with grease. You got a shot to get them where you want them to go. So we will be thinking and putting structures in place for principals to have conversations. One of the structures that Dr. Felder and Dr. Narcisse, who's not here, who's the chief of schools have already put in place are structures for high school, middle school, and elementary principals in a cluster format monthly to come together to be able to have meaningful conversations to focus on the vertical articulation you talked about.
This will be the last question. Remember, you can use your gallery walks. You can also turn in your comment cards if you have questions that have not been answered.
I'm Arnett Bodenhamer. I'm an 83-year-old 51 graduate from Pearl.
Yes,
Not
sir.
Pearl Comb, but Pearl. I don't have a question, Doc. I want to commend you. I'm an ex-military guy, and I see leadership, and I see leadership in you. I'm proud of what I've heard, what I've read, and now what I'm hearing from you.
Thank you.
And I want to commend you on the way you're going. I didn't serve in World War II, and there's probably not any folks in here that did. George Patton was my man. He was a salty man. He had his mess sergeant to cook a string of spaghetti. And when that spaghetti was done, he laid it out on the table in front of all of these generals. And he took his forefingers and he started pushing it. And you know which way it went, like a snake. Now, I can't say what he said, but he says you got to lead it. And that's what you're doing. And I appreciate you being the leader. And whatever I can do towards leadership, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you guys all for coming. Before we finish, I would like to acknowledge any of our veterans that we have here today, and I'm one as well. We've acknowledged our teachers, we've acknowledged our principals, we've thanked Faith Life Church. I would also like to thank our bus drivers and any of our service workers who may be here today with us. Thank you. Let's give them a hand and make it happen. And our wonderful students and extremely supportive parents. So let's all continue to do the work. I promised you guys that I would raise expectations for all children and raise achievement for all children. And finally, I can see that happening through Dr. Joseph. So thank you guys for working with us, and thank you for supporting us. And let's just stay behind him. And if you have a problem, send it his direction. We'll get it worked out. Thank you. And good evening.